Hi everyone, Bernardo here. What is your most paralyzing fear? This week, I'll be exploring the relationship between innate fears and third places. What if I told you that the most common fear out there is not even death? It's actually public speaking. But why? Everyone is born with a set of innate aversions. And these innate aversions, they all link to pain, suffocation, all the way up to isolation. And whenever we fear something, whenever we are scared of something, this is actually a trigger that activates these innate fears. And they all link into this web directly to death. As social animals, we always had to rely on the group that we've been working with to survive. And being scrutinized from that group was a death sentence, and still is. So it doesn't really surprise me that the most common fear that we share is actually public speaking. Just the thought of being scrutinized from our larger social group, it's paralyzing. And this definitely taps into the fear of missing out, or FOMO, which is that intrinsic anxiety that we feel whenever we see our friends or families having fun or taking selfies in really interesting social interactions. We all created something that we describe as the comfort zone. That's where we feel secure, that's where we feel safe and we feel in control. And most mentors, coaches and thought leaders out there will urge you to leave your comfort zone just so you can enter the magic land of growth zone or learning zone. And that's awesome. That's where you learn, that's where you grow. However, if you stretch yourself so much, you'll probably be hitting something called the panic zone, and that's somewhere no one wants to be. That's where your fear of public speaking starts to surface. You feel exposed. You just hit that place of paralyzing fear that you have no control whatsoever. And that's when safety places and safety mechanisms come into play. Sociologist Ray Oldenburg pioneered this terminology back in the 80s. And just recently, I read an amazing article by Jay Kapoor that got me up to speed with the concept of third places. A third place, in other words, is your home away from home. That's where you keep seeing the same familiar faces and you can hit that magic zone between panic and comfort. It's the traditional Roman baths back in the time, or the old coffee houses back in London, or even the traditional central square in a small town in South America right next to a church. That's where you feel comfortable about sharing your ideas, and that's a place that ideas are shared. You can talk to people, you can spread the news or even gossip. Third places nowadays are often a very strong part of urbanist thinking. And as Jay Kapoor states in his article, one of the main challenges of creating a third place is having a cohort of regulars. You can only achieve that magic between panic and comfort, so the growth zone, if you have a cohort of familiar faces. But how do you do that? And that's probably one of the main challenges on creating a new third place. That's a challenge that I face myself on a daily basis working at Makerspace Fab 9. How do you tap into pre-existing habits, and how do you create a space in which people can hang out on a regular basis and create a network of engaged members? Although challenging, the exercise of creating new third places can be really rewarding. Systems thinking brings up to the speed with the fact that the whole is much more than the sum of its parts. And some techniques that can be used when creating new third places involve stuff like finding where that specific member hangs out and trying to create a habit that revolves and piggyback around a pre-existing habit, like checking meetups in which people with very similar mindsets and very similar interests are hanging out already and trying to bring them to that specific third place that suits their needs. Also creating cohorts of people that are trying to do something very similar, and through an onboarding process they become sort of group that work around a very specific objective. But I would say that one of the most important things is understanding that every single human being out there has very specific innate fears that, like it or not, often linked to death, like isolation, and understanding how can you take people out of the comfort zone without bringing them all the way up to panic zone. This is definitely very powerful. And if you can create a safe space and safety mechanisms in which people feel comfortable enough but not panicking in a way, you're definitely doing a service to the society out there. That's it for this week. Thank you so much for joining me, and let me know if these tips can help with any project that you've been working on. If you have any questions, just feel free to comment, get in touch with me, send me a message, just let me know. Until next week.